The Lost Girl in the Rain. The rain poured heavily on the quiet planet of Ralos 9. Jack pulled his jacket tighter as he walked back to his camp. His boots sank in the wet ground. Cold wind touched his face, and the sky was dark. He had spent the day repairing broken machines at an old station nearby. Life on Ralos 9 was not exciting, but it was peaceful, until today. A sound stopped him. It was soft, like crying. Jack turned quickly. The trees moved in the wind, but the sound was real. A small, weak cry was coming from the forest. He listened. Again. There it was. Closer this time. He stepped off the muddy path and pushed through the wet trees. His heart beat faster. Then he saw her, a little girl, but not human. She was sitting under a large tree, her tiny arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was light gray and shining softly under the rain. Her hair was long, white, and stuck to her face. She had no shoes. Her thin dress was torn. She looked up at Jack with big blue eyes full of fear. Jack slowly knelt down. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." She said nothing, only stared at him. Jack took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around her. She didn't move at first, but when he placed his hand near hers, she reached out and held it tightly. "You're freezing," he whispered. She was shaking badly. He couldn't leave her there. Jack lifted her into his arms. She was light, like a feather. She rested her head against his chest, still holding onto his jacket. At his small camp, Jack placed the girl on the bed inside his tent. The heater was on, making the space warm. She sat silently, still holding the jacket. Jack gave her a towel and helped her dry off. He handed her a warm cup of soup. She stared at it, then slowly, she drank. Little by little, her hands stopped shaking. Jack smiled. "That's better." She looked at him but still didn't speak. Jack pointed to himself. "Jack." Then he pointed at her. "What's your name?" The girl stayed quiet. Then in a soft, strange voice she whispered, "Lura." Jack repeated it. "Lura, that's a nice name." Time passed. Jack tried to ask more questions, but she didn't understand much. She only knew a few words in common tongue. Still, she watched him closely and followed his hands when he showed her things. That night she lay under a blanket on the bed. Jack sat nearby, making sure she was warm. The wind outside howled and thunder rolled across the hills. Suddenly she cried out in fear and sat up fast. Jack rushed over. "It's okay, just thunder. You're safe here." She looked around the tent, breathing fast. Her eyes were wide with panic. Jack held out his hand. After a few seconds, she reached out and held it tightly. She didn't let go. Jack stayed by her side the whole night. He stared at her bruised legs and dirty feet. There were cuts on her arms and small purple marks near her neck. Something terrible had happened to her. She wasn't just lost. She had been running from something or someone. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the clouds stayed. Jack gave her some food and tried to reach local security on his radio. No signal. He checked again. Still nothing. "Strange," he said. "This line always works." Lura was sitting on the floor, drawing shapes with her finger in the dust. Jack looked at her and whispered, "Who are you really?" But deep inside he knew one thing for sure. This little girl was not safe out there, and whoever she was running from would come looking. Strange visitors in the dark. The wind outside Jack's tent made the trees whisper. The rain had stopped, but the forest was still wet and quiet, too quiet. Inside, Lura sat on a blanket, carefully holding a small wooden cup. She didn't speak much, but she had begun to look at Jack without fear. A part of her trusted him. That made Jack feel both proud and worried. He was boiling roots when he heard it, a soft beep from his motion sensor. Jack froze. Someone was near. He stood up slowly and grabbed his old plasma cutter. Not made for battle, but it could burn through steel if needed. He turned off the lantern. The tent fell into silence and shadows. Then, crack. A branch snapped outside. Jack moved to the eye flap and opened it just enough to peek through. Shapes in the fog, 3 tall figures, long cloaks, red eyes glowing in the dark. They were not human, they were not friendly. Jack's heart pounded. The aliens stopped in front of the tent. One of them sniffed the air like a hunter. A deep voice said, "The scent is fresh. She's here." Jack backed, away. He turned to Lura and whispered, "Hide, now." She didn't ask questions. Jack lifted a floor panel and helped her crawl inside the small tool compartment. He handed her a flashlight and placed a blanket over the panel. She looked at him, frightened. He gave her a small nod, then stood. Just in time. Knock, knock, knock. Jack opened the flap slowly. 3 alien men stood before him, tall, muscular, and armed. Their skin was dark green and their faces were long and sharp. The leader stepped forward. "We seek a lost creature," he said in rough common. "A young female. Silver skin. Stolen property." Jack kept his face calm. "Haven't seen anyone. Just me here." The alien's red eyes scanned the tent. "Strange," he said. "This place smells familiar." One of the others moved past Jack and picked up the wooden cup Lura had used. "She was here," he growled. "Recently." Jack stepped between them. "You have no right to enter my home without a warrant." The leader snarled. "We are the warrant." He moved closer. "If we find her with you, human, you will be punished. You protect stolen things. Then, you are a thief." "I told you," Jack said calmly. "I've seen no one." A long silence. Then the leader leaned forward, his red eyes inches from Jack's. "You smell like lies." Jack didn't blink. Finally, the aliens turned. The leader said, "We will return. If she is found here, your bones will hang from our spears." They disappeared into the fog. Jack stood still until the red lights were gone. He rushed to the floor and opened the panel. Lura looked up at him with wide eyes. "They're gone," he said softly. She climbed out and clung to him tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jack hugged her back. "You didn't do anything wrong." But in his heart he knew. She was more than a lost child. She was hunted. And now, so was he. That night, Jack stayed awake. He sharpened tools, reinforced the tent walls, prepared small bags of food and energy, packs. If they came back, he wouldn't hide, he would be ready. But even as he worked, one question haunted him. Who is Lura really, and where is her mother? A name and a past. The morning came, but the sky stayed gray. Jack boiled tea over the heat core, but his mind wasn't on it. His eyes kept drifting toward the small girl curled in a blanket near the tent wall. She hadn't said much since the hunters came. Her face looked calm, but Jack could tell. She was hiding fear. He sat beside her and gave her the warm tea. She took it without a word. Her small hands shook slightly. "Lura," Jack said softly. "I need to know more." She looked up, blinking. Jack reached into a drawer and pulled out a small device. A translator pad, old but still working. He placed it gently in her lap. "This will help us talk." She stared at it for a moment, unsure. Then slowly she touched it. The screen glowed softly. Jack spoke into it first. "Who are you running from?" The pad repeated it in her language. Lura looked down. She pressed her lips together. Then finally, she spoke into it. Just one sentence. The translator buzzed and responded in flat voice. "Bad men who took my mother." Jack's jaw tightened. "Where is your mother now?" Lura typed slowly. Her fingers were shaking. They locked her away. "She told me to run." "I did." Jack stared at the words. So her mother was alive, held prisoner. He kept his voice steady. "How long ago?" She responded. 3 sunrises. That meant just 3 days ago. Lura had been surviving in the storm, alone, since then. No food, no warmth, no shoes. Jack took a deep breath. You're very brave." Laura didn't reply, but her eyes began to water. Later that day, Jack brought out a small map and showed it to her. "Do you know where they took her?" Laura leaned over it, searching. She pointed to a dark area near the hills. Jack frowned. That zone was marked Sector 9B closed. It used to be a mining site. Then something changed. The miners disappeared. Since then, no signals, no reports, just silence. Now he knew why. They were hiding people there. Slaves. That evening, Laura opened up more. Using the translator, she told him about the cages, about other children being taken, about loud men with red eyes who shouted and hit, about her mother, a proud woman with silver skin who sang to her at night, who taught her to run, to hide, to survive. "She told me to find a good person," Laura typed. Then she looked at Jack. "I found you." Jack felt something stir in his chest, a weight, a duty. He hadn't planned on this. He came to Ralos 9 to be alone, to stay away from war and chaos. He wanted quiet. But now, there was a little girl with scars on her back looking at him like he was her last hope. And somewhere out there, a mother was still in chains. That night, Laura fell asleep early. Jack stood at the edge of the trees, holding his plasma tool, staring into the distance. His mind was racing. He couldn't keep hiding. They would come again. This time they might burn the camp to the ground. He had to make a choice. Either send Laura away, or go back into the fire with her, and maybe, just maybe, rescue her mother. A soft voice came from behind. "Jack?" It was Laura. She rubbed her eyes. Her voice trembled. "Will you leave me too?" Jack walked to her, knelt down, and placed his hand on her shoulder. "No," he said. "Never." Then he added something more. "We're going to find your mother." The return, not alone. The morning was cold, too quiet. Even the birds didn't sing. Jack packed a small bag with food, medical supplies, and a power cell. His plan was simple but dangerous. Follow the old trail Laura pointed to on the map, scout the Sector 9B area, and find out if her mother was alive. But when he stepped outside, Laura was gone. He panicked. He searched the woods, called her name. Nothing. Then he saw the footprints, small, barefoot, moving east, toward the hills. "She went after her mother alone," he whispered. Jack didn't waste another second. He grabbed his tool, checked the charge, and ran. The journey through the thick forest was rough. Broken trees, wet mud, sharp rocks. But after 2 hours, Jack saw something that made him stop. A tall figure in the distance, walking slowly, limping. He rushed forward. "Laura!" The little girl turned. She was there, holding someone's hand. Another figure, taller, thinner, weak, a woman. She collapsed in Jack's arms. He looked down. The woman's skin was silver gray like Laura's, but she was bruised, bleeding, and shaking. Her long white hair was full of dirt and leaves, her eyes opened slightly. Violet, deep, tired. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm Jack," he said softly. "Laura found me. I helped her. Now it's my turn to help you." The woman tried to speak again, but her voice cracked. She fainted. Jack picked her up and carried her all the way back to camp. That evening, she woke up inside the warm tent. Laura was holding her hand. Jack sat nearby, silently boiling broth. The woman looked around. Her lips were dry. You gave her shelter." Jack nodded. "She ran to find you," he said. "She walked through storms, waited in the cold. She believed you were alive." The woman turned to Laura. "I told you not to come, but I found him, Mama," Laura whispered. "I found the good man." Her name was Nerea. She had been a noble once, leader of a small alien house that refused to sell its people. But her land was taken. Her name erased. She and her daughter were sold to a secret slave mine deep in the hills. When they caught her trying to help other women escape, they took Laura from her. They said I would only live if I stayed quiet, she said. But I screamed. I fought. I made sure Laura ran. She looked at Jack. I never thought I'd see her again. That night, Nerea sat outside the tent, wrapped in a blanket. Jack brought her hot tea. She looked at him. You're not like the others. I'm just a repairman, Jack said. Not a hero. She studied him. You're more than that. You protected my daughter. She calls you family. Jack didn't speak. Nerea took a deep breath. My people will never accept me again. I'm branded, hunted, broken. Jack frowned. You're alive, and you're a mother. That means you're stronger than most. She shook her head. No, man wants a broken woman. Jack looked into her eyes. You haven't met the right man. The next morning, Jack awoke to the smell of food. Nerea was cooking. She moved slowly but carefully. Laura helped her. They looked like a family. Nerea turned to him and said softly, I don't have gold or status. I can't offer you a name. Then she added something that made Jack stop breathing for a moment. But if you'll have me, I'll be yours. Not as a slave, not as a burden, as a wife. Silence filled the tent. Jack stared at her. She didn't beg. She didn't look down. She stood with pride, even with all her scars. I never planned to stay here long, Jack said slowly. I came to Ralos 9 to hide from the galaxy, to disappear. He stepped forward. But maybe the galaxy brought me here for a reason. He looked at Laura, then back at Nerea. You don't have to offer yourself to me, he said, because I already chose you. Tears welled in Nerea's eyes, not out of weakness, but because for the first time in years, someone saw her not as a symbol, not as a tool, not as a price, but as a person. That night they sat by the fire under the stars. Laura curled up between them, holding both their hands. Jack looked at Nerea. What do your people do for marriage? She smiled. In old times we gave a piece of ourselves to the other. Something simple, something true. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small human coin. It's old, he said, but it kept me safe. You take it. Nerea took the coin and held it close. She tore a strip from her sash and tied it around his wrist. Then she whispered, Now I'm not lost anymore. Her past, her shame. The campfire burned low. Soft orange light flickered across the quiet tent. Jack sat polishing a damaged drone core, trying to distract his mind. Inside the tent, Laura was fast asleep, her small body curled up under thick blankets. She hadn't had a nightmare in 3 days. That felt like a miracle. Nerea sat across the room in silence, eyes watching the fire's glow. She hadn't said much since last night. Since she made her offer. Since Jack said yes. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was flat but strong. I should tell you what you're marrying. Jack looked up. You already did, he replied calmly. No, she said, not the whole truth. She stood, walked to the edge of the tent and turned her back to him. Slowly, she removed her top layer. Her silver skin glowed in the firelight, but the scars were brighter, lines, burns, whip marks, old and new, some deep, some crooked. Was once a princess, she said. Not like in your fairy tales. A real one, political, trained to lead, never allowed to cry. She traced a finger over a scar on her side. I spoke against the slave trade. I said no. That one word destroyed everything, her voice cracked. They killed my brothers. My father vanished. I was sold to the mines like a dirty secret. First, they tortured me to make me obey. When I refused, they put me in cages, sometimes with beasts. Jack's hands stopped moving. His jaw tightened. They let others use me, Nerea whispered. Not for work, for punishment. She turned slightly. Her eyes met his, wet but proud. Do you still want me now? Jack didn't speak. He walked over slowly and picked up her shirt, handed it to her gently. Then softly, You survived all that, and you still sing lullabies to your daughter at night. She blinked. I never wanted pity, she said. Jack shook his head. This isn't pity. This is respect. She looked away, ashamed. I thought maybe, if I gave myself to a good man, I could erase what they did to me. Jack's voice was firm. You don't need to erase anything. You're not broken. They tried to break you, but you're still standing. She turned fully to face him, chest rising and falling fast. You think I can be a wife after all that? You think I can be a woman again? Jack stepped closer. You already are. That night they didn't sleep. They sat beside each other quietly while the fire burned down. At one point, Nerea reached out and touched Jack's hand. He didn't pull away. She whispered, Do you know what my name means? Jack shook his head. In the old language, it means she who endures. Jack smiled. That suits you. The next day, Lura woke up to something she hadn't seen in years. Her mother was laughing. Not much, just a little, but real. She was standing beside Jack, showing him how to carve food roots with a thin blade. Jack was terrible at it, but Nerea kept correcting him and smiling, and Jack didn't mind at all. Later that evening, Nerea pulled Lura aside and brushed her hair gently. Mama, Lura said, are we safe now? Nerea looked toward Jack, busy fixing a tent light. Yes, she said. Lura tilted her head. Is he really your husband? Nerea thought for a moment. Not by law, she said, but by choice. Lura grinned. Can I call him father now? Nerea smiled, holding back tears. Yes, baby. You can. That night, Nerea placed her head on Jack's shoulder as they watched the sky. For the first time in years, she didn't feel dirty, didn't feel weak, didn't feel like a prisoner pretending to be a queen. She felt like herself. A mother. A woman. A wife. And beside her sat the only man in the galaxy who made her believe that was still possible. A dangerous offer. The skies above Ralos 9 were clear, but Jack didn't feel peace. He stood near the outer motion sensor holding his toolkit, in one hand and a blaster in the other. He had upgraded the perimeter systems just in case, but deep in his chest, something felt off, like the silence before a storm. Inside the tent, Nerea was teaching Lura how to read from a small tablet. Jack could hear their soft voices, the girls' laughter. That sound had become his favorite part of the day, but today, it felt like something precious, something that could be taken away. Later, while fixing the solar panel near the ridge, Jack saw them, 3 black specks in the sky, moving fast, no lights, no ID signals, not cargo drones, not peaceful. He ran back. That night, Jack and Nerea sat by the fire, alert. They've come back, Jack said. Nerea's face darkened. How many? 3 ships, small hunters, fast-moving. She looked down. They won't stop until I'm dead. Jack reached out. Then we won't let them get near. Nerea didn't answer immediately. Her hand shook slightly. Then she pulled a small box from her pack. Jack raised an eyebrow. What's that? She opened it. Inside was a weapon. Sleek, curved, glowing faintly blue. This was my family's. An oath blade, she whispered. It hasn't been activated since my father's death. I kept it hidden all these years. She looked at Jack seriously. I'm offering it to you. Jack frowned. Why? She leaned in closer. Because I don't just want to survive anymore. I want to stand beside someone. I want you to take me not just as your partner, but as your equal in fight and in name. Jack stared at the blade. Nerea's eyes didn't blink. Are you asking me to marry you again? He said quietly. She nodded once. Yes. But this time, not out of shame. This time, I ask you because I choose you. She placed the blade in his lap. If you accept me fully, you activate the blade. You tie our lives. The fire cracked softly. Jack closed his hand around the weapon. It was cold, heavy. He didn't move. He thought of her scars, her story, her strength, her daughter, their nights under the stars. Then he thought of his own loneliness, how he had run from love before, how he never believed he would ever want this life. And yet, this woman had walked through fire and still stood, and this child had called him father with joy in her voice. Jack slowly stood. He held the oath blade out in front of him, then pressed the side. The blade came to life, bright, humming, alive with energy. Nerea gasped. Jack spoke softly. I accept. The next morning, the wind howled. 3 hunter crafts landed not far from their camp. Jack and Nerea stood side by side. Lura hid underground, clutching the small wooden coin Jack had given her weeks ago. Jack looked at Nerea. We're not just protecting ourselves, we're protecting our family now. Nerea nodded. Let them come. They held hands for a brief second, then turned to face the storm, together. The husband. Decision. The wind was sharp. Dust spun across the clearing as 3 black hunter ships descended silently. Their hulls shimmered like oil in sunlight, sleek and cruel. Red lights blinked underneath like glowing eyes. Inside the forest tent, Lura hid underground. Her small hands clutched the carved wooden coin Jack had given her. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She just whispered one thing over and over. Please come back. Jack stood in front of the tent, the plasma tool on his back, the ancient oath blade in his hand, its light now white, awakened by choice, not blood. Beside him, Nerea stood tall. Her silver hair was tied behind her head. She wore an old cloak from her noble house, torn but proudly displayed. Across her back, a curved alien rifle. In her hand, a stun dart carved from bone. She was no longer hiding who she was. They were ready. The hunters stepped out of their ships. 3 of them. Large, heavily armed, their armor black with dark red veins running down their arms. Their leader wore a helmet shaped like a wolf skull. He stepped forward, his voice booming through a voice filter. Nerea of House Alarin, he said coldly. You are marked for execution. Nerea didn't flinch. Then do it, but you'll never touch my daughter again. The leader turned to Jack. And you, the human who shelters slaves, you could have walked away. But now, you will fall with her. Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. He raised the blade. It hummed like a living star. The battle began without warning. 1 hunter rushed at Jack. Fast, faster than a human should react. But Jack didn't move backward. He stepped into the swing, blocking it with the flat side of the oath blade. Sparks flew. The blade pulsed with energy, knocking the attacker back with a burst of light. Behind him, Nerea dropped to one knee and fired. Her stun dart hit the second hunter in the throat. He gasped, fell, twitched, and didn't rise again. But the leader was stronger, smarter. He moved through shadows and struck at Nerea from behind. She fell, wounded on the side. Jack turned, eyes wide. Nerea, the hunter laughed. She's nothing, you were warned. Jack charged not with rage but with purpose. Their weapons clashed, blade to claw, heat to hate. Jack fought with skill born from years of working with machines, pressure, risk. He didn't dance like a soldier. He struck like a builder. Each move deliberate, sharp, unforgiving. The leader faltered. Jack stepped forward. Leave now, or you'll never walk again. The hunter hesitated, but before he could respond, Nerea rose, her side bleeding, hands shaking. She raised the broken alien rifle and fired a single shot, straight into the hunter's leg. He screamed and dropped. Jack finished it with a strike to the helmet, splitting it open. Sparks exploded. The battle was over. Silence. Only the wind remained. Jack dropped the blade and ran to Nerea. She was on the ground, eyes closed. Stay with me, he said. Her eyes opened weakly. Did we win? Jack smiled, trying to keep the tears from coming. You never lose. She laughed softly, then coughed. From behind the tent, a small voice called out, "Mama!" Laura ran toward them, dirt on her face, eyes wide with fear. She fell beside her mother, crying. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. Nerea reached up and wiped her tears. "I told you. I'll always come back." Jack held both of them close, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a protector. He felt like a father. 3 days later, the message came from orbit. An official diplomatic cruiser landed outside their camp, white, peaceful, bearing the seal of the Free Houses Alliance. A tall alien woman stepped out. Elegant, armored, proud, she bowed to Nerea. "Your fight has been seen. Your truth has been heard." She handed Nerea a silver seal. "House Alarin is restored. You are no longer hunted. You are free." Then, she turned to Jack. "And by right of your oath and blade, you are no longer an outsider. You are one of us." Later that night, under the stars, Jack and Nerea sat together. Laura slept between them, a small smile on her face. Jack looked at the sky. "So, I'm married to a noble woman now." Nerea chuckled. "You were already married." He raised an eyebrow. "When did we agree on that?" "When you picked up the blade." Jack looked at her. "Then let me say it officially," he said. He stood and offered his hand. She took it. He spoke softly, but clearly. "Nerea, I choose you. As my partner, my equal, my home." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I accept." They didn't have a priest. They didn't have a crowd. But under the light of alien stars, surrounded by silence and survival, they had love. And in a galaxy full of war, betrayal, and shadows, that was rare. That was real. 1 year later, the valley was green now. Jack and Nerea had built a new home near the water. Laura went to a small school. She still wore the carved wooden coin around her neck, said it was lucky. Jack worked with machines again, but this time not alone. Nerea taught others how to resist, how to speak truth, how to fight with honor. They had nothing at first. Now they had each other. One evening, Laura asked Jack, "What would have happened if you never opened the tent that day?" Jack smiled. "I think I would have missed out on the most important part of my life."